When you're 16 and you just got your driver's license and your first car, nothing in the world is more important to you than actually getting the opportunity to drive it. I was a real idiot when I got my first car, being that I was a 16-year-old boy, and I managed to get myself a real clunker. My first car was a 1998 Dodge Caravan, and it did not work. I got it from some old dude's junkyard for $500 and then just kind of sent it to the garage in the hopes and prayers that they could do anything at all to make this thing drivable and road legal. Repairs ended up being over $1,000, which means it would have been cheaper to just get a $1,500 secondhand vehicle that actually worked than a $500 secondhand vehicle that didn't. However, I did manage to rig this thing up to look like the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo, so you know, that's a win. My car was probably in the garage for about 2 months, but in the eyes of a 16-year-old who just wanted to drive places with his friends in his cool new party van, that felt like a really long time. But eventually, I do get my car back, and it is fully functional, at least it seems to be. So I call up a bunch of my friends and I'm like, hey, my car is finally on the road, let's do something this weekend. Now, living in a small town, there's actually not a lot to do on any weekend unless you want to go bowling. So coming up with some grand plan of what we were going to do and like where we were going to hang out was actually a bit harder than we figured it would be. And so eventually we just ended up settling on the idea that we would go to Burger King, which sounds like a really boring plan, but when you live in the middle of nowhere, Burger King is a good 15 to 20 minute drive outside of town, so at least it was something to do. So Saturday comes around and I send Pat to get one of our friends because as far as I know, he lives closer to Pat than he does to anyone else. And I'm not sure if this person will be okay having their name brought up on YouTube, so I'm just gonna call him Desmond. I send Patrick to go get Desmond probably around 10:30 a.m. Patrick arrives at my house with Desmond probably around 12:30 p.m. So this is around the point where I start to get a little confused and slightly concerned as to how far away Desmond actually lives, because Patrick lives about 10 minutes from me. Now that we have Desmond, it's time to go get Kieran and Desmond's girlfriend. So our journey in the Mystery Machine starts now. About 10 minutes into the drive, something strange happens in the dash of my car. Suddenly, my speedometers do not work, nor does my gas gauge. They're both just dead, deceased. This was our first little road bump on our journey, but we were able to find a solution pretty quick in that you can just download a speedometer app in the App Store, and most of them come across as pretty accurate. And I knew I had a full tank of gas, so I wasn't too concerned about that either. In fact, this was a problem that we only pulled over for like maybe 3 minutes so we could wait for the app to download, and realistically we didn't have to pull over for that either. Also, this is a problem that would come and go throughout the entire time that I owned the Mystery Machine, and something I learned pretty fast is that if you just punched the dash, all your lights would turn back on, like you'd be able to see your speed and everything, it would all just come back. So we're back on the road and things look pretty good. We're listening to some music, we're vibing, and we're having a good time. When suddenly we take a wrong turn and we end up having to turn around in somebody's driveway and we get stuck. We were probably stuck here for about less than 5 minutes. All I really had to do was put the car in neutral and get out of it, and the three of us just kind of shook it a little bit, and then I got back in, put it in reverse, and it just kind of came loose. Now is a good time to bring up the fact that this story does take place in the winter. This story takes place probably in about January or February, so there's a lot of snow on the ground. We get unstuck and we're back on the road for, I kid you not, probably about 2 minutes before my power steering suddenly goes away. This was not a problem that I could just download an app for, so my solution was actually to get really mad and throw my keys into a snowbank that I then had to spend about 15 minutes digging them out of. I get my keys back and I call my dad and I tell him what's up, and he just kind of says that it's probably a good idea not to keep driving it. So he shows up in his car and he leaves his car with me and my friends to finish our little Burger King run, take them home, and then come home for the night, while he goes to take the Mystery Machine to the garage where he'll have my mom come pick him up. And while it is a bummer not to be driving my own car, especially where it's my first car, it is nice to be back on the road, and back on the road in a vehicle that I'm not now concerned might break down at any moment. Now the adventure is back on. We continue to go get Kieran, and then we go get Desmond's girlfriend, and we get a third friend, and we go on our voyage to the highway where we can get to Burger King. Once we make it to the highway, everybody is having a good time. The five of us are together, listening to good music, hanging out, talking, joking, goofing around, just being a group of teenage friends. Even though me and my friends were already at an age where we were doing drugs and committing atrocities unknown to the likes of man, this is an innocent moment that I do like to look back on, because I think that in general, innocent moments from high school are nice to look back on sometimes, because this is just a perfect pure memory to me of what it's like to not quite be a kid anymore, but not quite be an adult. You're at an age where you're already involved with things like weed and alcohol, and you're already dealing with things like friendships coming and going and relationships coming and going, and you have more drama in your day-to-day life than you'll probably ever have as an adult. But you're also at an age where you're able to turn something as simple as going to Burger King into a great day with your friends, because all you really need is a couple of homies in the car laughing around and telling dirty jokes to have a good time. We were having such a good time hanging out and listening to the Hamilton soundtrack that I actually wasn't paying that much attention to the road, and I missed our exit to go to Burger King. We ended up taking an exit into the next town over, and at this point it would totally just be closer to go one more town over and go to McDonald's or Dairy Queen or A&W, but we decided on Burger King the day before, we're going to Burger King. So we backtrack to the town that Burger King is in, and we go to Burger King, and we all get the exact same thing, I'm pretty sure. I think we all just got the Bacon King, and we all just eat our food. We're there for probably about 20 minutes, and then it's time to head out. That's right, all of this build-up and all of this hassle for a $10 burger and a 20-minute meal. But we truly felt like kings when we all walked out with our Burger King crowns on. Eventually, we make it back to Kieran's house to drop him off, and we get stuck in this guy's driveway for about an hour and a half. A mixture of shovels and bare cold hands are used to dig the car out as much as humanly possible, while we all take turns sitting in the warmness of the vehicle while others are digging it out. And while we've managed to make a little bit of progress, I must admit it does not look good, which is bad news for me. See, in this point of time, I'm actually not allowed to hang out with Kieran at all. So if I have to call one of my parents to come get me out of his driveway, that's going to be a problem. So here we sit, most of us digging with our hands like children in a snow fort, trying to get my car free, as I pray to God that we're able to do it. One way or another, Desmond ends up behind the steering wheel in the car, and somehow within a few minutes just gets the car out with some really quick, jerky driving maneuvers. This is the only man here who does not have his driver's license, so we are all baffled by this. I suck Desmond's dick to completion as a reward, and then we're back on the road. When we drop Desmond's girlfriend back off at her house, me and Kieran hop on her trampoline, and we break it with my fat ass before we leave. But honestly, I do blame some of that on the cold temperature, because those things don't do very well in the cold, and this thing was set up in the middle of winter. And if you have a trampoline in your yard, I'm going to jump on it. Now it's just me and Patrick and Desmond in the car, and the three of us are pretty wet from when we were digging the car out, and so we have the temperature in the car up really high, a little too high, and me and Pat start to get a little uncomfortable with the heat, regardless of the fact that we're wet. We're starting to sweat. Meanwhile, Desmond is still freezing in the back seat, but sacrifices have to be made, so we turn off the heat and roll down our windows. Getting to Desmond's house to drop him off takes well over an hour, which makes sense with how long it took Pat to go get him, and now I actually feel bad for sending Pat to get him in the first place, because I kind of assumed that it was a lot closer than it was. Desmond's pants are frozen stiff when we drop him off because they were wet and we kept the windows open the whole ride, so I guess it sucks to be him. Especially because me and Pat find this situation extremely humorous. At this point, Patrick's car is still at my place, so we just agree that he spends the night so that he doesn't have to come all the way back to my place to get his car and then go all the way back to his place. He can just come to my place and then drive to his place in the morning. If there's any moral to this story, it's that when you're a teenager, life is unfair, but that's okay because sometimes it's funny. And also, probably don't ever spend less than $1,000 on a car, because if you do, that car won't work. That's all I have for this story, so like and subscribe, leave a comment if you want to, and have a good day.